Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to the most in my house every single day, working from home the same day, every day's the same day, tomorrow will be the same day as every other day, podcast on the internet, made man, where today, this morning, I just finished watching episode 11 of season 7 of Mad Men, Time and Life. Ooh, Time and Life. Those are magazines. I mean, I think there's, like, currently, Time magazine, I think, is still a thing, and Life might be an online thing, or maybe they're all online. I have no idea, but before we get talking more into today's episode, let's take a moment to hear from today's sponsor. Yum, yum, yum. Orange juice is good. It's Tuesday morning. I'm having breakfast. And I just watched Time and Life, so let's talk about today's episode. Today's episode opens up in a nice restaurante where we see Pete and Ken having dinner, and there's a third table made, but it's not open yet. And I love this because this is Ken's reckoning. This is Ken's moment. Not this exact moment, but this episode. He gets to be like, you guys are jerks, screw you. First he gets to do it to Pete. So they're having dinner there, and Pete, they're whining and dining Ken, and he's having Ken's wonderful wine, this wine that he loves. And Pete's like, he's giving Ken a hard time. I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I like that. And Pete's, the whole client, this and this, and we're good with this, and blah, 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 and giving him the old, smiley glad hand that he does. And, Ken's like, I don't know about this, and, I don't know about that. And then Don shows up, and Pete's like, Ken keeps saying that, this chemical makes you think of people pooping. And Don's like, don't think like that. And Ken goes, okay. Ken just wanted to give Pete a hard time. He has no ill will against Don. He just wanted to give it to Pete, which I loved. I thought it was pretty great. Don comes home then afterwards, and he's in his sparsely patio furnitured apartment, which he's still in at the moment, checking his phone calls because he always seems to be getting calls from women's, and he's got 2 messages from Diana Bauer, who is the waitress that he was having a little tryst with. She left 2 messages, and the woman's like, oh geez, I'm sorry, she wasn't even supposed to. No, she didn't leave any messages. She called twice, and the woman said, oh, I'm sorry, we weren't even supposed to take those messages. Did she leave a number? She did not leave a number. I'm sorry, Mr. Draper. So the woman called thinking about Don. Maybe she called, we'll get there, but maybe she called for a specific reason. But once she couldn't get through to Don, she was like, I don't even want him to know that I called. Never mind. And Don's like, let my phone calls come through for the rest of the night. Because Don's thinking, maybe she'll call back. Maybe I'll have a moment to see her. Now, the next morning, we're in Sterling Cooper, and Roger opens up some mail. And this is where we see the major story of today's episode. And quite possibly the finish line of all these characters start to come into fruition. They have a letter in the mail that their lease is up. Their lease hasn't been paid, and it's being ended. And Don obviously thinks there's a major Roger thinks there's a major problem, so he's like, get the secretaries in here now. Get Don in here, the office manager. He's ready to fire them and start some real trouble. Then I'm actually going through the episode, not by memory, but I just watched it, and I'm going through scrubbing through it. So that's why I remember. That's why I'm going in order, and I'll remember something as little as Don riding up an elevator filled with mothers and kids, because it looks like they're all going into Sterling Cooper together for some sort of audition. I would say the smallest story of this episode deals with Pete and Trudy, and it's really kind of like a personal thing with their daughter Tammy. So why don't we just kind of why don't we just get through this whole thing now? Because it's nice for character building. It's an unneeded stress that Pete seems to be worrying about right now. But it really doesn't matter. I know that's mean to say, but I just, I don't care that much. So Trudy calls Pete directly, and she's all upset because Tammy didn't get into this prestigious school. And Pete's like, Campbell's been going here for generations. I'll take care of it, blah, blah, blah. I want to come to the meeting because Pete thinks he can talk his way into or out of anything. So they go to the, you know what? Is it weird to get this out of order? Well, I'm just going to say it. So they go to the meeting with the school guy, and the school guy is like, I'm sorry, there's been some sort of mix-up. And, Campbell's been going here for years. And the guy goes, well, you didn't go here? He goes, yes, but they've been going here since this was a barn or something like that. And, the guy starts giving them a hard time, saying Tammy didn't do good on her draw a man. She just drew a mustache and a tie. And Pete's like, a mustache? So I think the first thing Pete is thinking of is, who is this mustache man that's around my daughter? But then, Trudy's like, oh, I think, she does better than most people. And your wife was arrogant. She didn't apply for another school. And then it turns out that the real reason this guy was denying them is because of some year-old rivalry between his family and the Campbells. And the Campbells killed all of his family. And Pete was like, that was on order of the king. And the guy was a real jerk to Trudy. And then Pete punched the guy. That was the one moment where I thought Pete was actually, like, I didn't hate Pete in this episode, but he punched the guy right in the face, and he went back to Trudy's house with her, and they just had a nice little moment, and she's like, you should stay and see Tammy. He's like, he looks like he's afraid to see his own daughter. She wasn't there, but as it ended with that, he was like, you know what, I'll make a phone call. And she's like, you think you could do that, basically? And he's like, money talks. So that was really it for that part of the storyline. And that, I think Pete punched this fella, not only because of dealing with Trudy, not only because of this stupid family thing, but I think of all the stress that Pete is feeling right now because of the big news with this whole thing with the lease. So why don't we jump back to that? There's another storyline. These little storylines that are like character building, but not total, plot driven. So anyway, we'll get to that other storyline that has to do with Peggy and those kids. Joan brings Dawn and I can't think of the other girl's name. And I think I just learned his secretary's name, Caroline, I believe, is today. I just learned that today, so I'll automatically forget it. But it brings them all in, and he's like, "Oh, good, you're here. Great, you're fired." And they're like, "Wait, I just found out myself." So Dawn didn't forget to pay the bill. Nothing was done on their parts. They had nothing to do with it. McCann Erickson has canceled the lease. So we cut over. They're like, "What the hell's going on?" And Pete he's like, "I'll take care of it." He'll call McCann Erickson and figure it out. Meanwhile, that is going on in this, and I feel like let's just get through this right now, is that Peggy is doing some sort of testing with kids. Her and Stan are working on for some sort of client, and they're testing toys and they're testing kids. So they have a bunch of kids in for an audition. So it's right. They're not just testing toys, but they're bringing these kids in for an audition, and they bring the kids in. And Stan laughs. He goes, "You don't even like kids," and that bothered Peggy. Later on, they're in the audition with the kids, and Pete, Peggy's watching them like, "Okay, why don't you just all play like we're not here?" And then they sit down, and the kids are just all nervous, and she's like, "What's going on?" And Stan's like, "You wanted kids, not actors. Kids are shy. They're not going to be. You need to talk to them like they're people." And then Stan comes over all cool, and he's like, how far can you throw that ball? And the kid throws the ball, and everyone's laughing, and that kind of breaks the ice. And I think it bothered Peggy that she couldn't get through to these kids like that. So later on, Stan and Peggy are working, and we see a kid left behind. And she's like, "Oh, my mother will pick me up later, because my brother's at another audition, because that's what this mother does, brings her kids to auditions constantly to try to get them work." And while she's sitting there, like, Harry has this big explosion, and he calls some guy an asshole over the phone. And there's all this work going on, and all this adult stuff happening. Not like dirty, but just like grown-up stuff going on around this girl that might seem a little intimidating. And they're like, "Come on, come downstairs with us. You don't need to be here." They bring the kid downstairs, and they're working in the office, talking about. Oh, actually, when they're in the office, Peggy. I can't even. I feel like I'm jumping ahead, but Peggy tells Stan the big news that Peggy heard from Pete. This is what happens when I go out of order. Peggy tells Stan the big news that So Peggy tells Stan the news that she heard from Pete that no one was supposed to know at all, and that's they're talking about going, not going, and while this happens, and the girl accidentally staples her own finger and starts bleeding. And this is when the mother shows up. And the mother gets mad at Peggy, and Peggy gets mad at the mother. And she's like, "You do what you want with your kids. I'll do what I want with my kids." And that seemed to, bother Peggy. And the girl left at the mother leaving. And Stan's like, "Okay, all right, don't have to worry about it. It's nobody's fault." And then Peggy goes, "F her." She says the actual F word. I don't know if it was like that on AMC, but it certainly was on Netflix. And you could see that it really bothered her. And then they have a little conversation later where Peggy's like, "I like kids, and, who is she to judge me?" And Stan's like, "Look, it wasn't in the cards for you. Some people, now you have your career to focus on. That's fine. You have plenty of things." And you could see it really bothered Peggy. And she's like, people don't know. We don't know how, who knows what's the difference between a young woman and a young man, and this and that, the decisions they made. And young women have to do this, and they should be able to make decisions and have the same, thing that a man has. And you could see that Stan was like, "Huh?" And Stan's like, what did you do?" And that's when he realized that she was kind of opening up to him. These two have a nice relationship. And she told the truth. She actually opened up to him and said, he's with a nice family. I don't know where. And I guess that you're not supposed to know, so that you can move on. So that was really something, that she opened up to him and told him told them the truth, that she had a child. And he's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." And she stands up and she's like, "Well, you don't know lots of things about lots of people, and that's the point." Stan stands up next to her and looks at her and says, "No, it's not." And you could just see that he's like, "You're not just anybody, you're my friend." And this comes through later on in the episode, when right before a big meeting is supposed to happen. She calls Stan in his office, and she's in her office, and they're like, "Can you just stay on the phone?" He's like, "Yeah." And you remember the old days when she worked at the GCC, I think it was called, and she used to call over to Stan, and they used to just talk. You could see they just leave the phone on and they talk for a while. And that's how Peggy actually used that, because she overheard something, and she used that against Sterling Cooper once, which was pretty sneaky, sis. But I just like that their relationship is they're really close and they're really good friends. And that's really it for them alone. So why don't we jump back to the meat of this episode, which is starting with that lease. So Roger calls over to McCann. He's like, "There's been some sort of mistake," and the guy's like, "Oh, no. Actually, this is a good thing. This is a good thing. This was supposed to be the last thing that happened, not the first thing that happened." So he calls the guy, and the guy's like, oh, I wish you didn't find out this way. You weren't supposed to find out this way. We're bringing you in. So it turns out that McCann Erickson is dissolving Sterling Cooper into them. It looks, Roger's thinking the name, the place, they like their location. He's like, doesn't make sense for us to have a second location. Paying a second staff, that makes sense. That's fine. Paying all the people, but paying for a second location doesn't make any sense. And you could just see Roger dejected. And they're like, we're gonna have a meeting with you guys about this. We'll talk about this. And he hangs up the phone, and you could just see Joan like give him a hug, just like she was there, she saw it, the upset on their face. First thing, they go right into Don's office. Don's like, what's going on? And he's like, I need a drink. You want a drink? And then they bring in Ted. They bring in Pete. And then Joan comes in. So these are all the partners that are left. Meredith is like, what's going on? And they're like, can you please leave? They kick Meredith out. But she already knows something's up. And they're afraid. They're like, you tell him. No, you tell him. They don't want to tell him what's going on. And then boom, they bring the hammer down. That they tell them the news that they're being dissolved. They're being taken into the new McCann Erickson. Don just looked like resigned, and he's like, anyone else want a drink? And Pete's like, a drink? We're just gonna drink this? He goes, I'm not going. And Joan's like, yeah, you are. You have a 4-year contract and a non-compete. And Pete's like, I didn't agree to any of this. And Don's like, yeah, you did the moment we sold them Sterling Cooper. Pete was angry. Ted was like, well, I like it over there. And Pete's like, it's because you're a sheep. And Roger's like, knock it off. He's like, he doesn't, it was like his kind of thing of like, now's not the time to do this. Now's not the time to talk about this. We have a meeting tomorrow. And that's, before then, it doesn't leave this office, keep it between us, which does not happen at all. In fact, I think the first thing that happens, Pete leaves the office, and the first thing he does is get Peggy. Which I have to say, I kind of loved. Pete is I always called Pete a sociopath. I always called Pete a creep. But it's like the one thing that humanizes him. The one thing that makes him, to me, like almost sympathetic or likable is his connection with Peggy. I mean, let's be honest. That child that they're talking about, that's Peter and Peggy's child. That is, it's funny. I sometimes forget that. And this is their child. And that was their child, that they don't know where he is or what he's doing. And, I think that has always kept them connected. And Pete goes and gets Peggy right away and says, come into my office, I have something to tell you. And she could tell right away that something's up. And he tells her the truth, tells her what's going on. Which, and Pete's upset about, he doesn't know what's going to be happening over there. I mean, sure, Pete's just worried about Pete, but he's like, how is this going to affect me? And by the end of the conversation, Peggy is like consoling Pete, like, you'll do great. And he's like, this can't leave this room, which, Peggy doesn't hold to, because later on in the episode, when Peggy and Stan are talking about the kid, and they're in the office with the kid, she tells Stan. So it gets from Peggy it goes from Pete in the office with the partners who weren't supposed to tell anybody, and they didn't, except it got to Peggy, and Peggy got to Stan. And then also remember the secretaries that were in Roger's office. Dawn, the office manager, and the other woman who I never remember her name, the other African-American woman, they know too. And they were sworn to secrecy, but they know together. So it's only so long before the word gets out. Joan is just kind of like, it seemed like Joan is upset. She goes to call her boyfriend, that same guy from the previous episode, and she's like, I just had some pretty upset, work news. He's like, well, that's okay. We can talk about it when I'm there tomorrow. And she's like, I didn't know you're going to be here. And he yells to his secretary, get me on the first red eye. He goes, now you know. So he's dropping whatever the hell he's doing and going just to see Joan, which I thought was nice. He must still be out in California, obviously. Then the funniest moment of the episode, I think, happened. Meredith is like, what's going on? And Don's like, don't worry, it's just personal. Oh, there's a phone call for you. It's Lou Avery. And Lou calls, and he's like, I just want to let you know that I'm going. And Don's like, you know? He goes, well, I figured. Of course I know. And Don thinks he's talking about the McCann, what do you want to call it? Like a acquirement? No, that's not it. But no, what is it? I don't know what it is, but it's the takeover, whatever you want to call it. That's what Don thinks Lou is talking about. But no. Lou is talking about his cartoon. His little comic strip, whatever the hell it was called. It was like a Beetle Bailey knockoff. He is the Japanese. The people who do Speed Racer are taking him and making a cartoon out of his little comic strip. And he's going to Japan. He's moving to Japan. And he's like rubbing it in his face. And Don's like, okay, great, cool. I don't really care. And hangs up on him. But that means that the California offices are empty. And you could see right away Don Draper lying down. And I'm like, the wheels are turning. The wheels are turning. The wheels on the bus. That's not right. Wheel in the sky keeps on turning. That's more like it. He gets all the partners in the office. He's about to draw the curtains, and Joan's like, that actually looks worse if you're drawing the curtains. He's like, you're right. He brings all the partners in the office, and his big plan is California. They don't want to pay for this here. Apparently, they're paying for California themselves, I guess. I'm just, that's what I assume is happening. Because Don's like, look, we have all these conflict of interest clients. We have, I want to say Sunkist, but whatever the different clients they have that, Burger Barn, that McCann can't take because they have bigger company clients already. So what if we kept them and moved out to California and, we had the West out there, and we just kept those clients and the conflict of interest that'll still be bringing money in, at a fraction of the cost to McCann Erickson. And they're like, okay, all right. You can see they're kind of into it. Ted does not want to go back to California. You can see that. And they're like, fine, we need a man here. That's perfect. They'll like that. They like you. And it seems like they have a plan. They have a plan, once again, to save Sterling Cooper. They've done it before. They've done it numerous times. And now they have another plan to do it again. But just in case, Peggy has a headhunter over at her office, like a career headhunter, a job placement specialist. I don't know what you want to call this guy. And the actor looked familiar. I don't know why, but he looked familiar. And they're just over there, she brought the guy there to help her start looking for jobs. And he's like, look, I have to be honest with you. I think the job you should take is at McCann Erickson. They're a great company. And you'll be making so much more money. So it was like he took it as his responsibility because she's like, you have all this experience with no degree. People are going to love you. And she's like, great. Oh, so where do you think we should go? And he's like, McCann. After everything, he's building her up. She's all excited, and he thinks you should take them. That is the best place to work. And you can see that it's kind of a conflict. She's conflicted about it, but she's it seems like she's open. She's not completely closed to leaving and moving on. They bring Roger and Pete bring Ken into a hotel. They got a suite. They got him that same bottle of wine that he loved from the beginning of the episode. They got him all this food, and they're ready to talk to him about this big moment about them taking their client and coming with them to the West Coast so that they don't lose them because they know their business, that they're good at them. And Ken's like, well, I'm kind of new there. So I know you guys, but I'm still the new guy there. And a big change like that, that's, I'm not sure that they're up for that. And Roger and Pete think they could talk Ken into anything. And this, after years, after losing his eye, after losing these positions, after getting fired eventually, this is the moment where Ken goes, guys, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. No. And then he gets up, and then he leaves. And I wonder if that's the last time we ever see Ken. If it is, I love it. That was just a way to be like, you know, you guys screwed me, and now screw you. And he walked off. And I loved it. I thought it was great. He took his glass of wine, he got a little drink of the great bottle of wine, and he was out of there. We had a moment where Don and Ted look like they're working late and hanging out, just the two of them. And it was like you could see that Ted, it was a character moment because Ted talked about how he does not want to go to California. He's met someone here that he knew in college, and she's bright and she's beautiful, and it seems like he's really and his ex-wife is in California, and Don's like, yeah, so's mine. But the reason obviously is that he's met someone, and he wants to be, he wants to stay here for that special lady. Then Joan comes in and tells them that Ken was a no, and Don's like, let me talk to him. Joan's like, no, it was quite final. It was quite final. Let me tell you that. So the next morning, they're all ready to go to their big meeting, have their big pitch, and they're, it's like, this is it. This is the moment where they're going to save Sterling Cooper again. Meanwhile, I was talking about the Peggy let Stan know about what was going on, and she says, you could come. You could, actually that was later on when they were talking on the phone, and he's like, you should come. You should come and take the job too. And Stan's like, really? I don't know. But I think Peggy wants Stan there. If Peggy's going, she'd be much more comfortable with Stan being there. But let's go over to McCann Erickson, and they're like, gentlemen, come on in. And the two guys are like, what is going on? We're here to talk to you. And all of a sudden, there's an easel, and there's a presentation. They have all these poster boards ready to give a presentation. They get through one slide, and they're like, let me stop you right there. So right when he said, let me stop you right there, I'm thinking, this is it. This is the time. This is the one time that it's not going to work. Their idea, their little scheme, their little plan is not going to come to fruition. He's like, listen, this was, I want to tell you that this, you're coming here to have some of the 5 prestigious jobs. And that's what confused me. I was like, wait, are they only giving them 5 jobs and firing everyone else? That doesn't seem to be the case. I think then I realized he's telling them, you 5 are going to get 5 prestigious jobs. And he starts naming off clients like pharmaceutical and Nabisco and Coca-Cola. And you could see Ted was like, yeah, I love this. But they realized the rest of them, it's like, this isn't going to work. We are losing everything. We're being acquired. And this is the end. And then it just shows a shot of all, 5 of them standing there, the final 5 partners. And it's like, this is how it ends. Followed up by a round of drinks. What can you do? When all else fails on Mad Men, you drink. So they go out for some drinks, and Peggy's like, Joan's like, I got to get going. I have somewhere to be. She gives them all hugs. It's like, we tried. They kept toasting and drinking. They toasted to Cooper, and she gives them all hugs. And I just love the way she said to Roger, don't be a baby. And just gives them a hug. And then there's just 3 of them. Ted's like, I have someplace to be too, but one more round. And then Pete's like, I'll go home with you. So they took a taxi ride home together. And in the car, they just kind of have like a little heart-to-heart moment. And Joan's like, they didn't even say a client for me. And Pete's like, no, I thought the pharmaceutical one. And she's like, you could see she's like, oh, they're never going to take me seriously over there. And Pete's like, well, first Pete says he goes, for the first time ever, I think whatever's going to happen happens. It's like, you can't fight it. You can't fight City Hall. And then she's like, they're not going to take me serious over there. And he looks at her, he's like, well, they're not, they don't know what they have, or something like that. They don't know what they're going to be messing with. Or it was a nice little compliment, and you could see that made Joan feel a little better. She had a little smile on her face. So then I guess Ted left at some point. Now there were only two hanging out at the bar, Roger and Don, the two main mad men. And Roger's like, I promised God I'd start smoking if this worked out. He goes, I take that as a sign. And he lights up a cigarette. And they're talking a little bit about, the work and how Don's like, in another world, I could have been your cab driver. He's like, yeah, but you would have been sleeping with my grandmother. Or it could have been your chauffeur. He's like, yeah, but you would have been sleeping with my grandmother. And then thought that was funny. And Roger opened up a bit about, like, this is the end of Sterling, like the Sterling name, everything. Because this was, he goes, I was the only child, son of an only child, and I have an only daughter. And this Sterling Cooper was like the last the last part of his name. And when that goes, that goes. So you can see he opened up a little bit. That upset him. But the coolest part was he is about to leave, and he says, I'm meeting someone. Oh, I forget I don't know if it was when he was talking about it. He goes, you made a comment about when I married my secretary, and then you went and did the same thing. And he's like, I'm not judging. Oh, because I'm going to meet somebody. Oh, who? Marie. And Don's like, what? He goes, yeah. He's like, it's Megan's mother. He goes, she's crazy. And Roger doesn't care. But he's like, he goes, what happens if Megan finds out? Oh, she already knows. He's like, huh? Like, he didn't tell exactly why, but I just thought that was a fun moment. Don's like, all right, I'm not judging. But the look on his face when he first saw that it was Marie was like, he's like, are you kidding me? What is going on? Which I thought was kind of funny. And it seems, Don's had a lot to drink. He's had a rough day, and he goes to the Diane's, the waitress. He goes to her apartment, and she's gone. And there's a couple of guys living there now, and they're like, do you want to come in for a drink? I think they found Don attractive, and Don just gave a little smirk. He's like, oh, have a good night. He goes, do you know where she is? Like, we just moved in. She left her furniture here, which means she left in a hurry, which means hopefully in a dream world, it means she went back to her family. That's my dream. I hope she didn't just move on to something else and try to get away from everyone else. That's my fear. But hopefully in some fan fiction world, she went back to her family. Back in the office the next day, Dawn, not Don Draper, Dawn, the secretary, and the other African-American girl, who I don't remember her name, are talking. And they're talking about the move over. And they're like, do you need another office manager? And the other woman's like, they don't know if they need another black girl. Like, these are things that they're all worried about. And Meredith is right there. And she overhears them. And she's like, what are you talking about? She rushes into Don's office. She's like, what the hell's going on? He's like, can you get me an Alka-Seltzer? She's like, no. I want to know what's going on with McCann. Are you bringing me? He goes, I was going to tell you today. You can have work. You can have a job with me if you want to. Now, can you get me some Alka-Seltzer? And she's like, no, people are talking and things are going on. He's like, okay, get me Roger. And this is when the meeting, they bring everyone in to the big, like, open space, and they're about to talk. And this was kind of cool how this happened. They say, listen, we're being acquired by McCann. This is a good thing. This is good news. He's trying to butter everyone up, and then they just start talking, and people start talking, and then they get louder and louder, and they're trying to control them. And Don starts speaking up. He's like, listen, this is really good news. And people don't care. They're doing their own lives. And it's like, you realize these people, these are the partners, and they're important, but they're not the people that make up all the work. And these people have their own lives and their own conversations. And you hear these five people in the front talking or trying to talk or trying to get your attention. And they're like, oh my God, my life, all these things going on. And people start talking, people start moving around, people start scrambling, people start leaving, going back to their office, probably trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do next. And then the episode ends with the five partners upstairs, just standing there by themselves. And that's how the episode ends, where it's like, huh, okay, they're going to tell everybody. And then they're just left with just them. And that is the end of Time and Life, episode 11 of season 7 of Mad Men. Time and Life, Time Life magazine, Time and Life, that's obviously the play on words here. And it's just like, for us guys here, for us guys here. For what the hell does that mean? For these people in these episodes, the characters, time in life, it's almost like this is a big moment in your life, a big time in your life. That's what I get out of it. So where do we leave things? We leave things where Sterling Cooper is not going to be a name anymore. It's not going to be a building anymore. The people are going to be moving to McCann Erickson. And which is isn't that what happened the first time around with McCann Erickson? Like Sterling Cooper, the original Sterling Cooper was acquired. So they went off and made Sterling Cooper Draper Price. And now that got sold to McCann, and now they're doing it all over again. And this time there was no way out because they had ironclad contracts. I thought maybe they'd bring someone in to fire them again, which still is one of my favorite episodes when Lane Price fires them and they all have this like scheme behind people's backs. It was like they were trying to do it again, but I loved that they were trying to do it again, but this time it didn't work. I don't know, something about that makes it feel final, makes it feel like, we are seeing the end, because after today, my friends, there are only 3 episodes left. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. It's frightening, but the podcast will live on. Okay. So if you're subscribed to this podcast, my goal is the podcast will just live on as a new name, a new kind of branded podcast. I have a name idea picked out, and then I'm going to start a new show and do the same thing with a new show. So if you like Mad Men, if you love Mad Men, then, we only got a few episodes left. But if for some reason you like me talking about TV shows, well, we might have years and years ahead of us. It might be trapped in my home for the rest of eternity. Who knows? Who knows what's going on? Who knows what the future will bring? But at least you'll get to hear my voice, which really, doesn't that make everything feel better, right? So, my friends, I want to thank you, and I want you to follow me on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, follow me on Twitter at Geek Mentality. That's my Twitter account. Okay, that's going to be the Twitter account that I'm going to be talking about going forward. And of course, the website is fansnotexperts.com. And my friends, I think that's it. We have 3 episodes left where I've almost been made, but I'm not there yet. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming along with me on this journey through the years, through the seasons, through the episodes. We're not done yet, but we're almost there. But until then, I want to thank you for coming along with me on this journey as I strive to become a made man.
Fans Not Experts.